Welcome back to the Rock Vault, where today the amps hum with memory and every needle drop takes us deeper into the soul of the 70s. Rock ballads weren't just songs, they were lifelines, capturing love, loss, and late-night reflection. Today, we relive 10 unforgettable ballads that still echo like the heartbeat of a generation.
I'm leaving everything I ever knew.
While Wishbone Ash are often remembered for pioneering twin guitar harmonies and prog-tinged epics, their ballads revealed a different side of the band. Vulnerable, soulful, and quietly devastating. Nowhere is that clearer than Everybody Needs a Friend, a track from their 1973 album, Wishbone 4. Where much of their catalog leaned into instrumental brilliance, this song stripped away the flash and let pure emotion take center stage. The track begins with a slow-burning guitar line, delicate yet aching, soon joined by Martin Turner's plaintive vocals. His delivery is fragile, almost conversational, as though he's confiding in you rather than singing at you. Lyrically, it's a meditation on loneliness and the universal need for connection, themes that cut to the heart of the 70s era, a decade when so many were searching for meaning beyond the chaos of the times. Fans who discovered Wishbone Ash through their fiery live shows were often stunned by the intimacy of this ballad. It wasn't meant to fill arenas with thunder. It was meant to reach the quiet spaces of your life. Many remember spinning this track late at night, lights low, the turntable crackling as the guitars and harmonies painted a soundscape of longing. For listeners who had endured breakups, growing pains, or moments of isolation, if Everybody Needs a Friend felt like a hand on the shoulder. Musically, the band leaned into subtlety rather than spectacle. Andy Powell and Ted Turner's twin guitar chemistry, normally soaring in full flight, intertwined gently here, each note carrying as much weight as the silences between them. The song's slow build eventually erupts into a searing guitar solo, one that doesn't just impress. It aches, it pleads, it lingers. Though it never achieved the mainstream recognition of ballads by Zeppelin or Skynyrd, Everybody Needs a Friend remains a cult classic, cherished by fans who know Wishbone Ash was capable of just as much emotional firepower as technical brilliance. It's a reminder that even in the golden age of rock, sometimes the most powerful ballads weren't the ones blasting from car radios. They were the ones you found quietly, almost by accident, and kept with you forever. By the early 70s, the Rolling Stones were rock's swaggering rebels, loud, electric, and unapologetic, which is why Angie landed like a surprise thunderclap. Gone were the roaring guitars and riot-ready choruses. In their place was a piano-driven ballad steeped in heartbreak and quiet resignation. Recorded in Jamaica at Dynamic Sound Studios during the making of Goat's Head Soup, Angie stood as proof that even the world's most notorious rock band could strip themselves bare. The song opened with Nicky Hopkins's tender piano chords, immediately setting a tone of fragility. Mick Jagger's voice, usually sharp and defiant, softened into something vulnerable, almost pleading. Angie, when will those clouds all disappear?" A line that sounded less like a performance and more like a private confession. Behind him, Keith Richards's acoustic guitar glided gently, grounding the track with an understated strength. Though fans speculated endlessly about who Angie was, David Bowie's wife? Marianne Faithfull? Richards later explained the name came from his newborn daughter. The mystery didn't matter. The emotion was real, and it was universal. For longtime fans, hearing the Stones this exposed was disarming in the best way. Teenagers who once blasted Jumpin' Jack Flash through car speakers suddenly found themselves whispering along to Angie in quiet bedrooms. It wasn't a song to rile you up. It was a song to sink into. You could feel it in long summer nights, staring at the ceiling with the window cracked open, the sound of cicadas outside mixing with Jagger's weary croon. Commercially, Angie was a triumph, topping charts in the US and across Europe. But beyond sales, it expanded the band's identity. It showed that the same group who had given the world Street Fighting Man and Brown Sugar could also deliver a ballad powerful enough to stop you in your tracks. It wasn't about spectacle or controversy this time. It was about emotion, pure and unfiltered. What makes Angie endure is its honesty. It doesn't try to mend the heartbreak or offer answers. Instead, it lingers in the silence between love lost and life moving on. That bittersweet ache has kept the song alive for generations. Played at weddings, breakups, and quiet moments when nothing else feels quite right. Even now, decades later, when those opening piano chords drift from a speaker, the room seems to pause. It's a reminder that even the hardest rockers carry fragile hearts, and that in the 1970s, ballads like Angie gave voice to emotions we all felt but didn't always know how to say. Before Aerosmith became the kings of 70s hard rock swagger, they introduced themselves with something far more haunting. Dream On, written by Steven Tyler. When he was still a teenager, the song carried the weight of someone already wrestling with time, ambition, and the fleeting nature of life. Recorded in Boston at Intermedia Sound, it became the crown jewel of their self-titled debut. The track opens in a minor key, slowly building with piano and guitar that feel less like a rock anthem and more like a confession whispered in the dark. Tyler's vocals crackle with raw emotion, straining past their limits, not out of weakness but from chasing truth. When he sings, "Sing with me, sing for the years," you don't just hear the words, you feel them deep in your chest. For listeners in the early 70s, Dream On struck like lightning. It wasn't meant to get people dancing. It was meant to stop them in their tracks. Fans remember lying awake on summer nights, transistor radios glowing softly beside their beds, letting Tyler's aching voice fill the silence. It was the kind of song you turned up when you needed to believe that your struggles weren't in vain. Though it only became a modest hit at first, Dream On grew in stature as the decade unfolded. Radio stations picked it up again in 1976, and suddenly Aerosmith weren't just a scrappy Boston band. They were a voice of their generation. Today, it stands as one of rock's most enduring ballads, a reminder that even the hardest-hitting bands can deliver moments of soul-bearing beauty. Dream On is proof that ballads don't have to whisper to break your heart. Sometimes they soar so high, they remind us that chasing dreams, even when they hurt, is the most human thing we can do. Few ballads capture both tenderness and sheer power, like Free Bird. At its core, it began as a simple farewell, Ronnie Van Zant's answer to a girlfriend who asked why he couldn't settle down. His reply, "If I leave here tomorrow, would you still remember me?" became the foundation of one of the greatest rock epics of the decade. Written with guitarist Alan Collins, the song balanced heartbreak with defiance, offering vulnerability wrapped inside soaring guitar work. It opens slowly, anchored by Billy Powell's plaintive piano and Collins's gentle guitar. Van Zant's voice comes in soft, steady, almost resigned, delivering words that feel less like lyrics and more like life advice. For the first half, it's a true ballad, introspective, delicate, deeply human. But then, without warning, it transforms. What begins as a whisper soon explodes into one of rock's most legendary dual guitar finales, stretching nearly 5 minutes and burning itself into history. Fans who lived through the 70s remember the ritual. Concerts where lighters filled the dark as the song began, and arenas where the final solos felt like liftoff. Free Bird wasn't just played, it was experienced. For some, it was the soundtrack of letting go of a first love. For others, it became a hymn of freedom, blasting from car stereos during late-night highway runs with the windows rolled down. Though it didn't initially climb high on the charts, Free Bird grew into a phenomenon through live performances. It became a badge of identity for Skynyrd fans, shouted at concerts across the country, sometimes even demanded at shows where the band wasn't on stage. By the time the decade closed, Freebird had transcended its recording, evolving into a cultural shorthand for liberation, grief, and the uncontainable spirit of Southern rock. Even now, when those first notes ring out, you know exactly where it's headed, and yet it still gives chills every single time. Freebird is proof that a rock ballad doesn't have to stay quiet to move you. Sometimes it takes flight, soaring higher with every note, until it leaves both the band and the audience forever changed. Heartbreak has always been part of rock's DNA, but few songs made it sting as sharply as Nazareth's Love Hurts. Originally recorded by the Everly Brothers and later covered by Roy Orbison, it wasn't until this gritty Scottish band got hold of it in 1974 that the song transformed into a stadium-shaking confession of pain. On their album Hair of the Dog, it became the emotional centerpiece, an unexpected ballad from a group otherwise known for hard-hitting riffs. The magic was in the delivery. Dan McCafferty's raspy, lived-in voice didn't just sing the words, he bled them out. You could feel every syllable tear at the edges, like someone recounting a wound that refused to heal. Backed by a slow, distorted guitar progression, the song's arrangement was simple but devastating. Where earlier versions leaned on sweetness, Nazareth stripped it down to raw nerves and ragged emotion. For fans living through the mid-70s, Love Hurts wasn't just another ballad, it was a mirror. Teenagers sat in bedrooms with headphones on, thinking about breakups that felt like the end of the world. Couples who thought they'd found forever found themselves quietly singing along in the car, nodding at lyrics that cut too close. It was universal, reminding us that no matter how strong we thought we were, love could knock us flat. Though it never hit #1 in the UK or US, the song had an extraordinary global impact. In Norway, it spent an astonishing 60 weeks on the charts. In America, it became a staple of late-night FM radio, sitting alongside power ballads and hard rock anthems. The contrast between Nazareth's heavy rock image and this vulnerable masterpiece only made it more powerful. Love Hurts endures because it never sugarcoats the truth. It doesn't wrap pain in poetry. It shouts it, cracks it, and lets it burn out in the open. It's the kind of ballad that feels just as relevant today as it did in 1974, reminding us that while love may inspire the greatest joys, it can also leave the deepest scars.
Only for a moment, and the moment's gone.
Sometimes the most profound songs come from the simplest beginnings. Dust in the Wind started not in a studio but in guitarist Kerry Livgren's living room as he practiced finger-picking exercises. His wife overheard the haunting melody and urged him to turn it into a full song. What emerged became Kansas's most unlikely hit, a quiet, acoustic ballad from a band best known for progressive rock epics. Stripped of their usual bombast, Kansas let the music breathe. Layers of acoustic guitar, intertwined gently, with Robbie Steinhardt's violin weaving through like a mournful whisper. The lyrics, inspired by the biblical book of Ecclesiastes, carried a timeless weight. All we are is dust in the wind. It was both intimate and universal, a meditation on life's fleeting nature. Unlike their sprawling tracks, this one said everything in just a few minutes, and that brevity made it even more powerful. For listeners in 1977, the song hit a nerve. It was a time of uncertainty, economic struggles, cultural shifts, and questions about the future. Fans remember hearing it late at night on FM radio, its soft strums filling darkened rooms with a feeling of fragile reflection. It wasn't a song for blasting at parties. It was for those quiet moments when you were left alone with your thoughts. Despite its unexpected nature, Dust in the Wind became Kansas's highest charting single, peaking at #6 on the Billboard Hot 100. More importantly, it became a cultural touchstone. The song was played at graduations, funerals, and countless personal milestones, marking both endings and beginnings. Dust in the Wind proved that a rock ballad doesn't need amplifiers or thunderous solos to leave its mark. Sometimes, all it takes is a single guitar line and words that remind us how fleeting and how beautiful life really is.
Be a simple kind of man.
In a decade defined by loud guitars and restless energy, Simple Man was Skinnered at their most heartfelt. Written by Ronnie Van Zant and Gary Rossington, the song was born after Van Zant spoke with his grandmother shortly after his mother's passing. Her words of humility, love, and wisdom became the lyrical backbone of one of the most enduring Southern rock ballads ever recorded. The track opens with Rossington's steady, unhurried guitar. Gentle but resolute, Van Zant's voice enters with a raw honesty, sounding less like a performance and more like advice passed across a kitchen table. The band holds back, letting the message breathe. It's not about fireworks or flash. It's about grounding yourself in what truly matters: kindness, faith, and living with intention. For fans in the 70s, this song wasn't just another track on the radio. It was a compass. High school seniors played it at graduation parties, holding on to its wisdom as they faced uncertain futures. Parents shared it with their kids as a reminder to stay true to themselves. And at live shows, entire crowds would sing along, turning Van Zant's words into a communal vow. Recorded at Studio One in Doraville, Georgia, and released on their debut album, Simple Man stood apart from Skynerd's harder-driving tracks like Gimme 3 Steps or Sweet Home Alabama. Instead of rowdy celebration, it offered reflection. Its steady build and soulful guitar solo gave it just enough muscle to sit comfortably among rock ballads. But its heart remained rooted in family and timeless truth. Over the years, Simple Man has become a rite of passage song, played at weddings, funerals, and milestone moments where advice feels more precious than ever. It's not just Southern rock. It's universal, reminding us that in a complicated world, sometimes the most powerful message is also the simplest. Many songs feel less like they were written, and more like they were discovered, waiting in the ether for the right hands to bring them to life. Stairway to Heaven was born in 1970 at Headley Grange, an old stone mansion in the English countryside. Robert Plant sat by a fireplace, scribbling down words as Jimmy Page strummed those delicate opening chords. What emerged was a ballad that unfolded like a journey, moving from pastoral calm to thunderous transcendence. It wasn't just a song, it was a passageway, and listeners have been walking through it ever since. Plant's lyrics came in a rush of inspiration, mysterious yet universal. Lines that hinted at desire, spirituality, and longing. They didn't tell you what to feel. They unlocked feelings you already carried. John Paul Jones added haunting recorder parts that gave the intro an almost medieval air, while John Bonham held back until the build demanded his thunder. By the time the electric climax arrived, you weren't just hearing music. You were being carried higher. Even without ever being released as a single, Stairway became the most requested track in FM radio history. DJs spun it endlessly. Fans demanded it at every concert, and bootleg tapes spread its legend. For many, it was the soundtrack of late-night dorm rooms, basement jam sessions, or long drives down dark highways, headlights glowing as that solo cut into the night. It was more than background music. It was a rite of passage. Decades later, the song remains a towering symbol of the era's ambition. It's proof that a rock ballad could be more than just a tender song. It could be an odyssey, stretching across 8 minutes, weaving acoustic fragility with electric fire. Stairway to Heaven didn't just shape the 70s. It defined what a rock ballad could be.
Just a few more hours, and I'll be right.
In 1976, no one expected a band like Kiss, famous for fire-breathing, face paint, and explosive concerts, to deliver one of the decade's most tender ballads. Yet Beth did exactly that. Hidden among the hard rock theatrics of Destroyer, it stood apart with its delicate piano, string arrangements, and Peter Criss's surprisingly vulnerable vocals. It wasn't the sound of rock gods on stage. It was the sound of a weary man apologizing to the one he loved. The song's roots were modest. Co-written by Chris and Stan Penridge years earlier, it began as a light-hearted tune about bandmates' wives constantly calling during rehearsal. But under producer Bob Ezrin's guidance, it was reshaped into a heartfelt ballad of longing and regret. Chris's raspy voice carried lines like, "Beth, I hear you callin', but I can't come home right now," with an exhaustion that felt painfully real to anyone who's ever had to choose between passion and personal life. For fans, Beth was a revelation. Teenagers who admired Kiss for their spectacle suddenly heard something intimate and deeply human. Couples slow danced to it in gymnasiums. Listeners played it on quiet evenings, letting the melancholy piano lines wash over them. For a moment, the band that embodied excess proved they understood restraint, and it worked. Beth climbed to number 7 on the Billboard Hot 100, becoming Kiss's highest charting single. More than that, it gave the band legitimacy beyond their theatrical image. Suddenly, critics who had dismissed them as gimmick-laden showmen had to acknowledge their ability to deliver a song of pure emotion. Today, Beth endures because it shows a side of rock often overlooked, that even in the loudest, flashiest corners of the genre, vulnerability has its place. In the middle of pyrotechnics and painted faces, Kiss gave the world a ballad that still whispers directly to the heart. While most ballads tell stories of love or loss, Pink Floyd's Time reached for something deeper. Our fleeting grip on life itself. Released in 1973 as part of The Dark Side of the Moon, it opened with the haunting chime of clocks, each one recorded individually around London. What followed was not just a song, but a meditation on mortality, delivered with a power that only Floyd could summon. David Gilmour's vocals carry a weary wisdom, each line warning of how quickly years slip away. Roger Waters' lyrics don't console. They confront, urging us to notice the seconds passing before they're gone. The band builds the song patiently, layering echoing percussion, brooding keyboards, and finally, Gilmour's guitar solo, soaked in delay, soaring yet aching. It is one of rock's most devastatingly beautiful moments, a ballad not of romance, but of life itself. For those who heard it in the 70s, Time was a wake-up call. Students spinning vinyl in dorm rooms found themselves staring at the ceiling, questioning what they were doing with their lives. Commuters on long drives let its words settle into their bones, reflecting on missed chances and roads not taken. It wasn't background music. It was a mirror. The cultural weight of Time has only grown. It remains a cornerstone of classic rock radio, still stopping listeners in their tracks 50 years later. Its power lies in its honesty. Unlike most ballads, it doesn't offer comfort. It asks you to pay attention before the moment slips away. In many ways, Time is the perfect closer to the era of 70s ballads. It reminds us that rock music wasn't just about escape or rebellion. It was also about truth, and few truths cut deeper than this one. The clock is always ticking, and there you have it. 10 unforgettable rock ballads from the 70s that still echo like old friends across the decades. These songs weren't just music. They were moments frozen in time, carrying our joys, heartbreaks, and late-night reflections. Their timeless pull reminds us why the era will never fade from memory. Which of these ballads takes you straight back to your own story? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to keep the spirit alive. Until next time, this is Rock Vault, so keep the vinyl spinning.